Your soulmate's marriage confession left people speechless. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because sometimes the words that leave people speechless are not loud, dramatic, or filled with shocking secrets. Sometimes they are quiet, honest, unexpected. The kind of words that have been waiting patiently inside someone's heart for far longer than anyone realizes. Not because they were trying to deceive anyone. Not because they wanted attention. But because speaking honestly requires courage, and courage often arrives slowly. And listen to this. Your soulmate never imagined that an ordinary day would become one they would remember for years. The morning began just like every other. Golden sunlight slipped gently through the curtains. Birds welcomed another sunrise. People hurried toward work. Coffee shops filled with quiet conversations. Neighbors smiled as they passed one another. Everything appeared completely normal. Nothing suggested that this ordinary day would quietly become the beginning of something unforgettable. Because your heart needs this right now, because life's greatest turning points often begin on days that seem completely ordinary. Your soulmate couldn't have predicted what was about to happen. And listen to this. Throughout the morning, they found themselves unusually thoughtful. Simple tasks took longer than usual. Not because they lacked motivation. Not because they were distracted by responsibilities. But because one question kept returning. How long can someone hide what truly matters before silence becomes heavier than honesty? The question surprised them. They tried to ignore it. They focused on work. They answered messages. They completed responsibilities. Yet every quiet moment brought the same question back. Eventually they realized something. Their heart wasn't asking for an answer. It was asking for courage. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty often begins when we stop running from the questions our hearts keep asking. Your soulmate quietly reflected on that truth. And listen to this. Later that morning, they met with several close friends. The conversation flowed naturally. People laughed. They shared stories from childhood. They talked about careers, family, dreams, plans for the future. Everything felt light-hearted. Then someone asked a simple question. What do you think makes a marriage truly last? The room became quiet. Several people answered first. Some spoke about romance. Others mentioned compatibility. Some believed shared interests mattered most. Others talked about financial security. Every answer sounded reasonable. Then everyone looked toward your soulmate. They hadn't planned to speak. Yet something inside them gently whispered. Now is the time. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful conversations often begin with one unexpected question. Your soulmate slowly took a deep breath. And listen to this. For several moments they remained silent. Not because they didn't know what to say. Because they wanted their words to be honest. Finally they smiled gently and began speaking. I used to believe marriage was about finding the perfect person. The room listened carefully. Now I believe something completely different. Nobody interrupted. I think marriage lasts because two imperfect people keep choosing each other on ordinary days. The room became completely silent. Not because the words were shocking. Because they felt true. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting commitment is strengthened through daily choices rather than perfect circumstances. Your soulmate quietly continued. And listen to this. People often think love survives because life stays easy. But I've learned that love survives because people keep showing kindness even when life becomes difficult. They continue listening after disagreements. They continue forgiving after mistakes. They continue appreciating each other after the excitement of new beginnings has faded. Nobody spoke. Several people simply nodded. Those words seemed to touch something everyone understood. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine love grows strongest through consistency rather than constant excitement. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. One friend quietly asked, "So what changed your mind?" Again, your soulmate paused. Looking out the nearby window, they watched the wind gently move through the trees. Finally they answered. Watching ordinary people. Everyone looked confused. They continued. I've watched elderly couples patiently help one another cross the street. I've watched husbands quietly carry groceries without being asked. I've watched wives encourage their partners after difficult days. I've watched people choose patience when frustration would have been easier. None of those moments make headlines. But those moments build lasting relationships. The room grew even quieter. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest expressions of love often happen when nobody else is paying attention. Your soulmate quietly treasured those memories. And listen to this. The conversation continued for another hour. People shared their own stories. Some admitted they had underestimated the importance of communication. Others spoke about forgiveness. Several described how small daily habits had strengthened relationships far more than expensive gifts ever could. Listening carefully, your soulmate realized something beautiful. Almost everyone remembered ordinary moments more clearly than dramatic ones. A comforting conversation. A thoughtful apology. A patient smile after a difficult day. Those memories lasted longer than grand celebrations. Because your heart needs this right now, because simple acts of care often leave the deepest impressions on the heart. Your soulmate reflected deeply. And listen to this. Later that afternoon, they decided to take a walk through a nearby park. The gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers. Children laughed in the distance. Birds rested among tall trees. An elderly couple slowly walked hand in hand. Watching them brought another realization. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They weren't proving anything. They simply enjoyed walking together. Step after step. Year after year. That quiet image spoke louder than many speeches ever could. Because your heart needs this right now, because enduring relationships are often built through thousands of ordinary moments shared with faithfulness and care. Your soulmate smiled quietly. And listen to this. As evening approached, they returned home and opened an old notebook. Instead of writing goals or achievements, they began writing lessons. Marriage isn't sustained by perfection. Trust grows through honesty. Respect grows through listening. Love grows through daily choices. Gratitude should never remain unspoken. Reading those words filled them with unexpected peace. Not because they had solved every mystery of life, but because they had discovered what truly mattered. Because your heart needs this right now, because clarity often arrives when we return to the values that guide our hearts. Your soulmate quietly accepted that truth. And listen to this. As night settled outside, they stood beside the window watching the stars slowly appear. The confession they had shared earlier wasn't really about marriage alone. It was about becoming the kind of person capable of building lasting trust. Someone who speaks honestly. Someone who listens patiently. Someone who apologizes sincerely. Someone who forgives generously. Someone who chooses love not only during exciting seasons, but also during ordinary Tuesdays, quiet evenings, and difficult conversations. That realization stayed with them. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting commitment is strengthened by ordinary faithfulness more than extraordinary moments. Your soulmate smiled peacefully. And before turning off the light, they wrote one final sentence across the bottom of the notebook page. The greatest confession I could ever make isn't that I believe in perfect love. It's that I believe imperfect people can build something beautiful when they keep choosing honesty, patience, respect, gratitude, and kindness together. Those words became the beginning of a new chapter. Not because every question had been answered, but because they finally understood that the strongest marriages, and the strongest relationships of any kind, are built one ordinary day at a time. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after sharing those unexpected words about marriage, your soulmate noticed something they hadn't anticipated. The room became completely quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence that follows confusion, but the thoughtful silence that follows honesty. No one rushed to speak. No one laughed. No one argued. Instead, every person seemed to be reflecting on their own experiences. And listen to this. Your soulmate looked around the room and realized that every face carried its own story. Some smiled softly. Others looked down at the table. A few quietly wiped away tears they hadn't expected. It wasn't because the confession revealed some shocking secret. It was because the words reminded everyone that lasting relationships are rarely built through dramatic moments. They're built through thousands of ordinary choices that often go unnoticed. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest relationships are created through consistency, not perfection. Your soulmate quietly realized they weren't the only one learning that lesson. And listen to this. After several moments of silence, an older gentleman sitting nearby smiled gently. He leaned forward and said, "May I tell you something?" Your soulmate nodded. The man looked around the room before speaking. "My wife and I have been together for more than 40 years. Everyone listened carefully. People always ask us what our secret is. He laughed softly. They expect some incredible answer. But honestly, there isn't one. The room smiled. Our marriage survived because every ordinary day we tried to treat each other with kindness. Some days we succeeded better than others. Some days we apologized. Some days we laughed. Some days we simply sat together in silence. But we kept choosing each other. Those simple words filled the room with quiet emotion. Because your heart needs this right now, because enduring love is often built through simple faithfulness practiced every day. Your soulmate listened with gratitude. And listen to this. Another person quietly joined the conversation. She smiled warmly before speaking. When I first got married, she said, I believed happiness would come from finding someone who never disappointed me. She paused. Instead, I discovered something much better. I found someone willing to grow with me. Someone who admitted mistakes. Someone who forgave mine. Someone who never stopped trying. The room became silent again. Not because the story was dramatic. Because it felt deeply familiar. Everyone had experienced moments that required patience. Moments that required grace. Moments that required choosing understanding instead of pride. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships become stronger when both people remain willing to grow. Your soulmate quietly treasured those words. And listen to this. As the afternoon continued, the conversation became less about marriage and more about character. One person spoke about honesty. Another spoke about forgiveness. Someone else shared how learning to truly listen had changed their family forever. Your soulmate noticed something surprising. Nobody talked about perfection. Nobody claimed relationships were easy. Instead, everyone described the same quiet pattern. Listening. Respect. Patience. Humility. Kindness. Again and again. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships are strengthened by ordinary habits repeated over many years. Your soulmate reflected deeply. And listen to this. When the gathering ended, your soulmate decided to take a walk before heading home. The afternoon sun warmed the streets. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. People greeted one another with friendly smiles. Everything felt peaceful. Walking slowly through a nearby park, they noticed an elderly couple sitting together on a wooden bench. They weren't speaking. They weren't looking at their phones. They simply watched the world together. Comfortably. Peacefully. Your soulmate smiled. That quiet moment seemed to confirm everything they had heard earlier. Love doesn't always need impressive words. Sometimes love simply remains present. Because your heart needs this right now, because presence is often one of the greatest gifts we can offer another person. Your soulmate quietly carried that lesson with them. And listen to this. Later that afternoon, they remembered something their grandparents had once said. Marriage isn't about winning every disagreement. It's about protecting the relationship while solving the disagreement together. As a child, those words had seemed ordinary. Now they felt profound. Your soulmate realized how often people accidentally begin treating one another like opponents instead of partners. That realization changed the way they viewed conflict. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy communication seeks understanding before victory. Your soulmate quietly embraced that truth. And listen to this. As evening approached, they returned home and reached for the notebook that had become their companion throughout this season of reflection. Instead of writing about emotions, they wrote about principles. Speak honestly. Listen patiently. Forgive quickly. Express gratitude often. Protect trust through consistency. Each sentence felt simple. Yet each carried years of wisdom. Reading them back brought unexpected peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because simple values practiced consistently create extraordinary relationships. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. Looking back over the entire day, they realized the confession that had left everyone speechless wasn't really about marriage alone. It was about choosing the kind of life they wanted to live. A life where appreciation isn't delayed. Where apologies aren't avoided. Where kindness isn't reserved only for special occasions. Where commitment is demonstrated through everyday actions rather than impressive speeches. That realization filled their heart with gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest commitments are revealed through daily faithfulness rather than occasional grand gestures. Your soulmate quietly accepted that lesson. And listen to this. Before going to sleep, they stood beside the window watching the stars appear one by one. The world outside had become wonderfully still. The conversations from earlier in the day continued echoing through their heart. Not as memories alone, but as gentle reminders. Choose patience. Choose honesty. Choose understanding. Choose gratitude. Choose kindness. Again tomorrow. And the day after that. Because those ordinary choices quietly shape extraordinary relationships. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting love grows through countless ordinary decisions made with sincerity and care. Your soulmate closed the notebook one more time. Before turning off the light, they wrote one final sentence across the bottom of the page. The confession that surprised everyone wasn't about finding perfect love. It was realizing that lasting commitment grows when imperfect people continue choosing humility, honesty, forgiveness, gratitude, and kindness, especially on ordinary days when nobody else is watching. Those words brought complete peace. Not because every question about relationships had been answered, but because they had discovered something far more valuable. Real commitment isn't built in one unforgettable moment. It's quietly built every day. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after the conversation ended, after the room slowly emptied, after every thoughtful story had been shared and every heartfelt confession had settled into silence, your soulmate realized that something inside them had quietly changed forever. Not because someone had convinced them. Not because they had discovered a hidden secret. Not because they suddenly understood everything about love. But because they finally understood that the strongest relationships are not built on perfect moments. They are built on faithful hearts. And listen to this. The following morning arrived peacefully. The golden light of sunrise stretched across the room. Birds welcomed another day with gentle songs. The breeze carried the fresh scent of morning through the open window. Everything looked ordinary. Yet your soulmate smiled before the day had even begun. For the first time in a long while, they weren't thinking about finding the perfect relationship. Instead, they were thinking about becoming the kind of person who could nurture one. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting love begins with the character we choose to build within ourselves. Your soulmate quietly accepted that truth. And listen to this. As they prepared breakfast, they remembered something that had been said during yesterday's gathering. Marriage isn't sustained by extraordinary days. It's strengthened by ordinary mornings. At first, those words sounded simple. But the more they reflected, the more profound they became. How many mornings begin with kindness? How many begin with gratitude? How many begin with choosing patience instead of frustration? Your soulmate realized that a peaceful life is often created long before major celebrations ever arrive. It begins in quiet moments that no one else notices. Because your heart needs this right now, because the habits we practice every day quietly shape the future we eventually experience. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. Later that morning, they walked through familiar streets. The neighborhood was slowly waking up. A bakery filled the air with the comforting smell of fresh bread. Shopkeepers greeted customers warmly. Children laughed while walking to school. An elderly man watered flowers outside his home with careful attention. Everything felt calm. Watching these simple moments reminded your soulmate that happiness often hides inside routines we overlook. No one was trying to create a perfect moment. They were simply living with care. Because your heart needs this right now, because joy often grows where gratitude is practiced consistently. Your soulmate quietly treasured that lesson. And listen to this. As they continued walking, they noticed a young couple sitting together on a park bench. They weren't exchanging expensive gifts. They weren't taking photographs. One person quietly handed the other a warm cup of coffee. They smiled. They talked. They laughed. Nothing extraordinary happened. Yet somehow, it felt beautiful. Your soulmate realized that genuine affection is often revealed through thoughtful actions rather than dramatic gestures. Because your heart needs this right now, because love is expressed most clearly through everyday acts of care. Your soulmate reflected deeply. And listen to this. They found themselves returning to the same peaceful bench where they had spent so many afternoons thinking. The breeze gently moved through the trees above. Birds rested quietly on nearby branches. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns across the grass. Sitting there, they opened the notebook once again. This time they didn't write questions. They didn't write fears. Instead, they wrote promises. I will never stop learning. I will never believe that love removes the need for effort. I will continue choosing kindness even when life becomes stressful. I will remember that every conversation shapes trust. I will make gratitude a habit instead of an occasional feeling. Each sentence felt like planting a seed. Not for one perfect day, but for an entire lifetime. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships grow from daily habits, not occasional inspiration. Your soulmate quietly smiled. And listen to this. As the afternoon continued, they remembered watching their grandparents together years ago. There had been no dramatic declarations. No grand performances. Just small acts repeated every day. One would prepare tea. The other would ask how the day had been. They celebrated simple victories. They comforted one another during difficult seasons. They laughed over stories they had told countless times. Looking back now, your soulmate realized those ordinary moments had quietly built an extraordinary marriage. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting commitment is created through consistency far more than excitement. Your soulmate treasured those memories. And listen to this. The afternoon slowly turned toward evening. The sky filled with warm shades of gold and soft orange. Walking beside a quiet lake, your soulmate watched the water reflecting the changing colors above. The surface remained calm. Only gentle ripples disturbed the reflection. They smiled. Relationships can be like water. Sometimes calm. Sometimes unsettled. But when people choose patience, honesty, and understanding, clarity returns. That realization brought unexpected peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because every relationship experiences challenges, but trust is strengthened when people work through them together. Your soulmate quietly embraced that truth. And listen to this. Returning home, they prepared a simple meal and sat beside the window as evening settled across the sky. Instead of reaching for distractions, they reached once more for their notebook. Across a fresh page they wrote, "The greatest confession I can make is not that I have all the answers. It is that I want to keep growing. I want to become more patient, more understanding, more grateful, more faithful in ordinary moments." Reading those words filled them with peace. Not because they believed they had become perfect, but because they had committed themselves to continual growth. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships flourish when both people remain willing to learn and mature together. Your soulmate quietly reflected. And listen to this. Night slowly covered the world. Stars appeared one after another across the dark sky. Standing by the window, they thought about the confession that had surprised everyone. It wasn't really about marriage. It wasn't about a ceremony. It wasn't about titles. It was about a way of living. Choosing respect when disagreements appear. Choosing encouragement when someone feels discouraged. Choosing forgiveness when mistakes happen. Choosing gratitude before opportunities pass. Choosing love not only during celebrations but also during quiet, ordinary days. That became the true confession. Because your heart needs this right now, because love is ultimately revealed through the choices we make every single day. Your soulmate smiled with quiet gratitude. And listen to this. Before closing the notebook for the evening, they carefully wrote one final paragraph. If I ever build a lifelong relationship, I don't want it to be remembered because everything was easy. I want it to be remembered because we kept choosing honesty when conversations became difficult, patience when life became complicated, forgiveness when mistakes were made, gratitude during ordinary days, and kindness when no one else was watching. Those words remained on the page. Simple, honest, quiet. Yet they carried more meaning than any dramatic speech ever could. The room became still. The night felt peaceful. Tomorrow remained unknown. New lessons would come. New conversations would begin. But your soulmate no longer feared the future. They believed that a relationship rooted in humility, trust, communication, compassion, and everyday faithfulness could continue growing stronger through every season of life. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after every heartfelt conversation, after every quiet moment of reflection, after every lesson gathered from ordinary people living extraordinary lives, your soulmate finally reached the end of a journey that changed the way they understood love forever. Not because they discovered a perfect relationship. Not because they uncovered a hidden secret. Not because they suddenly knew every answer. But because they realized that the greatest confession anyone can make about marriage is not about finding perfection, it is about choosing faithfulness, humility, and kindness every single day. And listen to this. The morning began with remarkable peace. The first rays of sunlight slipped gently through the curtains. The room was quiet. Outside, birds greeted another ordinary day with familiar songs. Neighbors waved to one another as they started their routines. Children laughed on their way to school. The world seemed unchanged. Yet inside your soulmate's heart, something had become wonderfully clear. The search for the perfect relationship had quietly ended. In its place came a new goal. To become the kind of person who makes a relationship stronger through character rather than expectations. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting love grows when we focus on becoming the right person as much as finding the right person. Your soulmate smiled gently. And listen to this. As they prepared breakfast, they reflected on every conversation that had shaped this journey. The elderly couple who spoke about choosing each other every day. The friend who admitted that forgiveness had saved their relationship more than once. The family member who explained that respect is often shown through small acts of patience rather than dramatic declarations. Each story carried a similar message. No lasting marriage had been built on excitement alone. Every strong relationship had been strengthened by ordinary habits repeated faithfully over time. That realization filled them with gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because consistent love is more powerful than occasional grand gestures. Your soulmate quietly treasured those lessons. And listen to this. Later that morning, they decided to take one final walk through the familiar park where so many moments of reflection had taken place. The trees gently swayed in the breeze. Sunlight filtered through the leaves. Children played happily nearby. A young family shared a picnic beneath a large oak tree. An elderly couple slowly walked hand in hand, smiling at one another without speaking very much. Watching them reminded your soulmate that true companionship doesn't always require impressive words. Sometimes it simply means remaining present. Remaining patient. Remaining faithful. Because your heart needs this right now, because love is often expressed most clearly through steady presence. Your soulmate quietly reflected. And listen to this. Sitting on the familiar wooden bench, they opened the notebook one final time. Its pages told the story of a changing heart. The first pages were filled with questions. The middle pages with lessons. The final pages with gratitude. Looking through everything they had written, they noticed one truth repeated again and again. Relationships become strong when people keep choosing one another during ordinary days. Not only during celebrations. Not only during milestones. But during quiet mornings, busy afternoons, difficult conversations, unexpected disappointments, and peaceful evenings alike. Because your heart needs this right now, because commitment is revealed most clearly through consistency. Your soulmate smiled softly. And listen to this. As the afternoon continued, they remembered watching their grandparents many years before. At the time, nothing about their marriage had seemed extraordinary. Now they understood why. Every morning they greeted one another warmly. Every evening they asked about each other's day. They celebrated simple victories. They faced disappointments together. They prayed together. They laughed together. They continued learning about one another even after many years. Those ordinary habits quietly created an extraordinary life. That memory became one of the greatest lessons of all. Because your heart needs this right now, because lifelong love is built one ordinary day at a time. Your soulmate carried that lesson with deep appreciation. And listen to this. As the afternoon slowly faded into evening, the sky became painted with beautiful shades of gold, orange, and violet. The peaceful sunset reflected across a nearby lake. Watching the calm water reminded them that every relationship experiences seasons. Sometimes the water is perfectly still. Sometimes strong winds create waves. Yet with patience, honesty, and mutual respect, calm eventually returns. No healthy relationship avoids every challenge. Healthy relationships learn how to navigate those challenges together. Because your heart needs this right now, because unity grows stronger when people choose to face difficulties as partners instead of opponents. Your soulmate quietly embraced that truth. And listen to this. Returning home, they prepared a warm cup of tea and sat beside the window. The room felt peaceful. Instead of thinking about what marriage should give them, they began thinking about what they hoped to give a future relationship. Encouragement. Patience. Honesty. Respect. Faithfulness. Compassion. Gratitude. Listening. Forgiveness. Those gifts required no wealth. No perfect circumstances. Only daily intention. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest gifts in any relationship are qualities of the heart. Your soulmate quietly smiled. And listen to this. They turned to the final blank page of the notebook. After several long moments of reflection, they slowly began writing. I promise to listen before I assume. I promise to apologize when I am wrong. I promise to celebrate small moments instead of waiting only for big milestones. I promise to express gratitude while there is still time. I promise to protect trust through honesty. I promise to choose kindness, especially on ordinary days. They paused. Then added one final promise. And I promise never to stop growing. Reading those words brought unexpected peace. Not because they believed they would never make mistakes, but because they understood that healthy relationships are strengthened by people who remain willing to learn. Because your heart needs this right now, because humility allows love to continue growing through every season of life. Your soulmate quietly closed the notebook. And listen to this. Night gently covered the sky. Stars slowly appeared above the quiet neighborhood. Standing beside the window, they reflected on the title of this story. People expected a shocking confession. They expected drama. They expected secrets. Instead, the confession that left everyone speechless was beautifully simple. Marriage is not sustained because two people never struggle. It is sustained because they keep choosing one another with honesty, patience, forgiveness, and respect. That simple truth carried more power than any dramatic announcement. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest commitments are built through everyday faithfulness rather than extraordinary moments. Your soulmate smiled with complete peace. And listen to this. Before turning off the light, they carefully wrote one final message across the last page of the notebook. If my life ever leaves a legacy, I don't hope people remember perfect moments. I hope they remember kindness offered without being asked. Patience shown during difficult seasons. Forgiveness given freely. Honesty spoken gently. Gratitude expressed often. And a heart that never stopped choosing love through ordinary daily actions. They slowly closed the notebook. The room became still. The journey that began with one unexpected confession ended with quiet wisdom. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities. New conversations. New lessons. Yet they no longer worried about creating a perfect relationship. They simply wanted to build one choice at a time, with integrity, compassion, humility, and unwavering respect. Because your heart needs this right now, because every meaningful relationship is shaped by small acts of love repeated consistently over time. Your soulmate rested with a peaceful heart, knowing that the greatest confession they could ever make was not about a wedding day or a single promise. It was about choosing every day to become a little more patient, a little more understanding, a little more grateful, and a little more loving than the day before.